Now, Hegseth's lawyer told NBC News his client is innocent, claiming the accuser was the aggressor of the incident and that she later extorted Hegseth for money. Also breaking, NBC News reports that Trump's transition team is exploring whether military officers involved in America's withdrawal from Afghanistan can be court-martialed. That comes as several outlets report Trump officials are drawing up a list of military officers to fire. And moments ago, because there's not a lack of news today, folks, NBC News reported that current and former senior Justice Department officials have begun reaching out to lawyers in anticipation of being criminally investigated by the Trump administration. Ooh. Joining us now is MSNBC contributor and professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude, and Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. He is the co-host of the Latino Vote podcast.
Gentlemen, good morning to you both. Welcome to the table this fine Sunday morning. So, Eddie Glaude, brother, man, let me get this straight. We have several of Donald Trump's nominees who have sexual predation clouds hanging over their heads. We have a group inside the administration that's forming, planning to go after long-serving men and women of our military who did their jobs, looking to court-martial them because, well, why the hell not? And you have the administration, this new administration, saying, you know what, we don't need FBI investigations for some of our people because, you know, that's just so cumbersome. The DOJ, FBI officials, the transition, all of this is signaling a direction for this country, which, okay, I'll admit, I don't understand why people didn't see this coming because Donald Trump told us we would be here. But how do you explain to people now what they're witnessing? How do we just sort of, oh, well, this is just the process? Or is there something deeper here that the country should be concerned about?
Well, Mike, first of all, I agree with you, and it's great to be here with you guys this morning. You know, birds of a feather flock together. I mean, I guess that's the way we explain the sexual predation and the like with these similar guys being picked for the possible cabinet appointments. Well, look, I think it's important for us to understand that there are two things happening at once here. One is an effort to consolidate executive power, and the other is, in some ways, a pursuit of the deconstruction of the administrative state. And these two things are going to come together. Now, what does it mean? We need to prepare ourselves, and we know this is going to happen. This is going to be the imperial presidency on steroids. And what we're going to see is basically those who are committed to the Constitution versus those who are committed to Donald Trump. And we need to understand that's going to play itself out in all of these various agencies and departments, and particularly in the military and policing agencies, precisely because of Donald Trump's own past and his desire for revenge. And then you combine that effort, remember, consolidate executive power, the imperial presidency on steroids, you combine that with the ongoing effort to deconstruct the administrative state, that it's not small government that is the aim, it's broken government. That is the ambition. That is to say, gum matters up so that things can redound to the states, move to the states, and that's what we can see. So we're seeing the convergence of these two things. One is ideological, the latter that is, and the other is deeply, deeply personal.
So Chuck Rocha, there are people who understandably have tuned out after this election, so a lot of this is flying under the radar for them. All of these appointments, as my friend Simone has said, they're a test for Senate Republicans, right? Which is why some of them might like to see this done by recess appointments. They don't have to be on record taking a vote on some of these folks. How do Democrats hold them responsible for the folks that they are going to allow at the highest levels of government?
I think it's the most important part of the conversation because the people we watch, they didn't vote for this kind of chaos. They may have voted for Donald Trump, but in every focus group that I've done, they voted for lower prices. They wanted to go back to pre-COVID. It was never about all the confusion that's going on. And let's talk about this in its totality. This is a kitchen cabinet. And in my cabinets at the house, I got my dishes in one thing. I got my drinks in another. I may have bourbon in a special cabinet, but there's order.
Always a special
Always
cabinet
a cabinet for the bourbon.
Yes.
This is more like my junk drawer because all the crazy broken things are in there. And I think the American people will see that, and that's not what they voted for.
You know, I just, as we were talking about this morning before the show started and reading through the new reporting, in my mind, I'm thinking some people might, hear this, if, it gets to their social media feed or whatnot, or if they're watching right now and say, some people may feel like this matters a lot, and others may say, well, why does this matter now? And I think it matters because who the president puts in positions of power, it matters. It matters if they believe in treating people well and adhering to the rule of law. But I guess, if Donald Trump has appointed them, the rule of law isn't necessarily the first thing they're concerned about.
No, Simone, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, when we think about who he's going to put over DOJ, how is he going to deploy the Justice Department in pursuit of his quote unquote enemies? If we think about who he's going to put over the Department of Defense, will they allow him to deploy troops on domestic soil, right? When we think about who he's going to put over the Department of Education, will they in some ways accelerate the efforts to defund the Department of Education? In all of these appointments, we have to think about the way in which they will in some ways be a part of an agenda aimed at, in some ways, and to my mind at least, destabilizing the republic, undermining basic democratic principles. So if people think that this doesn't matter, they're going to, I was about to say something I shouldn't say, they're going to mess around and find out. How about that?
FAFO.
So, the interesting thing is the underlying politics, all of this, Chuck. I mean, you and I are party guys, so, we understand some of this from a slightly different level, where we kind of, get how the pieces move on the board. There's an interesting note on the Bulwark by Mark Caputo, who says, as Trump begun formulating a type of individual he wanted atop the DOJ, he was drawn to those attributes and to the idea that Matt Gaetz, would help him investigate the investigators. The hunters have become the hunted, a Gaetz confidant said. This is not your grandfather's party. This is MAGA. We are now declaratively in this space where the transition of a once proud Republican Party, a center-right party, is now basically a hole in the floor. And to your idea of all broken things going into a junk drawer, we're seeing all broken things fall into this hole. All manner of excuses and lies geared up to fill this hole. So politically, how do Democrats respond to the hole that's been created in our body politic by MAGA, in which the good discussions around policy and the direction of the country and the values and the principles no longer matter? It's all about whether or not you can plant your lips firmly enough on Donald Trump's butt cheek in order to satisfy him, as opposed to doing the right things under the Constitution.
You fill the void with the truth and contrast. Me and you've run lots of campaigns. The way you win a campaign is you do contrast. In this last election, no matter how much of a contrast we tried to tell people about how good a job Joe Biden had done, they truly believed that this man would not do what he's actually doing right now. So it's an opportunity for Democrats to draw a contrast because we were not able to in the election. That's why we lost. We have to admit we lost and why we lost if we're ever going to rebuild this party and get back to where we were with working folks and other people. But the key is filling the void with the truth and starting that early, not 6 months before election, 30 days before the election, but starting now with the drumbeat going, we told you about this. This is proof that we weren't lying and we are better than this as a country because as this whole, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you want what's best. And this chaos and the way it's going to embarrass our country is not what the American people want.
Well, I would commend real quick to you the conversation we had yesterday with Pramila Jayapal, who I thought very clearly laid out.
Democrats have been very clear, led by Hakeem Jeffries. I am waiting on the Senate, particularly Senator Schumer.
I do love whenever I see this
I drink to that.
Simone and friends, to talk about the stakes here, there are the stakes for democracy. And then there's the reality that if a lot of these folks get confirmed, the reverberations of the choices they make and the policies they lay out will last for generations to come. So I'm thinking, Eddie, specifically about Chris Wright, who Trump is nominating for Energy Secretary, and the fact that this is a person who does not believe that we are going through a climate crisis. Take a listen to what he has said on the matter.
There is no climate crisis, and we're not in the midst of an energy transition either. What about extreme weather, you ask? we have seen no increase in the frequency or intensity of hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, or floods, despite endless fear-mongering of the media, politicians, and activists.
I bet the folks who are still reeling in Florida and
It's
North
laughable.
Carolina
Come on.
disagree. It is laughable, Michael, but I gotta tell you, as a mom of little kids, I'm scared. Like for people who are going to inherit this planet, right? And we know that we're already running out of time. So the fact that now policy is going to be determined by someone who's not following the science, who doesn't believe that we are already living in the middle of this crisis, despite nature telling us otherwise, is to me, Eddie, alarming, sort of as a generational legacy, that this is what we are endowing to our children.
No, Alicia, I think that's absolutely right. First of all, that's just some dumb shit. I'm sorry, it's just this early in the morning. This doesn't make any sense on so many different levels. And look, we need to understand that this is not just simply generational, this is existential for particular communities. And so those communities who, with the floods we saw in Asheville, the strength of the hurricanes that we saw in Florida, and let's just think about the global South, people in the Caribbean, islands that are on the front lines of this, poor communities that are experiencing, right, the ways in which environmental change, climate change is impacting their quality of life. And so let's think about this outside of the realm of politics, Democrats and Republicans. Let's think about this in terms of the life chances of everyday, ordinary people, and particularly the most vulnerable of us. And so this guy can sound like he's reasonable, but we need to call this for what it is. It's stupid. I was going to say something else again. I don't know why I'm prone to cussing this morning, but you get the point, because something is at stake here that goes beyond politics, it seems to me.
It's because,
You need
Eddie,
to get the holy oil, Alicia. You need to get some holy oil.
I got some in the back. I can bring it up.
Can I just note that it is, I actually hadn't seen the clip, and I did read my elements this morning. And Alicia, it's just crazy because as we had this conversation, the President Biden, is going to make a trip to the Amazon today to talk about the historic climate pledges and to mark World Conservation Day. He's the first U.S. president to visit the Amazon. The split screen just couldn't be more clear.
Eddie, Chuck, you are both sticking with us. Next, the immigration hardliners making a return to the White House, what Democrats can do about it. And later, we're going to be joined by California delegation Congressman-elect Latifah Simon and Congressman Robert Garcia, how blue states are planning to push back against the Trump administration. We're watching The Weekend.
A crew of murderous pirates is coming.
We're lost.
I'll get you home. We'll make a partnership. I need you to take the controls.
Okay. Neil? Neil?
Be warned of booby traps, pirates, and mountains where none dare to go.
Skeleton Crew, only on Disney+.
Here. Same time next month?
Okay.
Who's that?
Oh, just an annoying subscription.
He sucks. You gotta get rid of him.
I know, but he's just so hard to cancel.
Just download Rocket Money. You cancel subscriptions you don't want right in the app, and it might even be able to get you a refund on some of the money you lost. Download Rocket Money today.
Step 1.